$80,000 at 47 is treated almost universally as a failure. Every retirement calculator on the internet agrees. And ask anyone which decade decides whether a person retires comfortably, and they will tell you the 20s. Start early, they say, because the early money is the powerful money. They are not wrong, exactly. They are simply describing the least productive years of the entire process. The productive years are somewhere else. And for a man sitting at 47 with $80,000 and 18 working years left, they have not happened yet. There is also a number attached to the feeling that it's too late, an exact figure, in dollars, for what hesitation costs a person in this position. That number comes at the end. Start with the version that requires nothing. $80,000, already invested, left completely alone. Nothing added, nothing touched. No discipline, no budgeting, no change of any kind. Run that forward 18 years at 7%, a figure drawn from long-run market history and an assumption rather than a promise. And it reaches roughly $270,000. Nobody did anything. It more than tripled while its owner was busy believing he had already lost. $270,000 is not a retirement. Spread across 25 years, it comes to about $11,000 a year, which is a softer version of the same problem. But it establishes something important before anything else is added. The money already saved is not dead. It has been working the entire time it was being apologized for. The apology is the strange part, because the balance that feels shameful is statistically ordinary. Look at what people in their late 40s actually hold in retirement accounts, and the median sits far below what the calculators demand. The man who feels behind is standing in the middle of the distribution, not at the back of it. The advice was written for an exception. Almost everyone is the rule, which leaves the part he controls. He is not retired. He has 18 more years of paychecks arriving whether he plans for them or not. Say he commits $1,000 a month. That number provokes an immediate objection, and the objection is usually wrong for two reasons. The first is that the $1,000 is not all his. Where an employer matches contributions, a substantial share of that monthly figure arrives from a completely different budget, and an unclaimed match is not caution. It is a declined raise, accepted quietly every month for years. The second reason is more interesting, and it runs against how people picture their own finances. At 25, a person has time and no money. At 47, he has less time and the largest income of his life. For most workers, the mid-40s into the 50s is the peak earning stretch of the entire career, and it arrives at the same moment the heavy costs start falling away. The mortgage approaches its end. Children begin feeding themselves. The debt carried out of a person's 20s finally stops following him. So the $1,000 a month is rarely hidden in spending. It is hidden in raises already absorbed. Income rose, lifestyle rose to meet it, and the difference disappeared into a life that felt normal within about 6 weeks. Nothing has to be surrendered to find it. The house stays the house. The car stays the car. Only the destination of the next raise changes. Put it together, $80,000 already invested, plus $1,000 a month for 18 years. On that same 7% assumption, personal contributions over that period come to $216,000. Add the original $80,000 and the total put in by a human being is about $296,000. The account reaches roughly $700,000, which means $400,000 arrived from nowhere. No one earned it, no one deposited it. It was manufactured out of time, the single resource the man was most certain he had run out of. And the way it arrives is the part that changes the entire calculation. The conventional understanding is that compounding rewards the earliest dollar most, and that understanding is correct. A dollar invested at 25 has 40 years to multiply. The same dollar at 45 has 20. On a per dollar basis, early money wins permanently, and no amount of later effort recovers it, which is why the advice exists and why it feels like a closing door. Yet the growth itself does not behave that way at all. Track where the money actually appears across those 18 years, and it is wildly uneven. 13 years in, the account holds about $446,000. Then the final 5 years arrive. Contributions across those 5 years total $60,000. Growth across the same 5 years comes to roughly $255,000. More than a third of the entire retirement materializes in the last 5 years. Years that have not been worked yet. Both things are true at once, and the tension between them is where almost everyone gets lost. Early dollars are worth more individually. Later years produce more in total. Growth is slow at the beginning, not as a punishment for starting late, but because there is almost nothing there to grow. 7% of a small number is a small number, and 7% of a large one is an income. The 20s build the pile. The years immediately before retirement are when the pile finally does something. The man at 47 already has the pile. He has mistaken it for the ending. That concentration creates an obvious vulnerability, and it deserves a straight answer rather than a change of subject. If most of the growth lands at the end, a market collapse at the end lands on the largest balance a person will ever hold. This has a name, sequence risk, and it means the order of good and bad years matters, not merely the average of them. A crash at 28 is an inconvenience. The identical crash at 63 is a different event entirely. 3 things reduce it. Retirement is not the day investing stops. Money that will not be spent for another 20 years still has 20 years to recover, and only the first slice is needed immediately. As the balance grows, most people shift part of it into steadier holdings. Less growth, less movement. A trade that becomes more attractive the closer the date gets. And the damage, in the overwhelming majority of cases, is not done by the fall. It is done by selling into the fall. A collapsed balance recovers. A liquidated one has stopped compounding permanently, and no market recovery reaches it. The risk is real. It is also, unusually among financial risks, mostly behavioral. There is a second oddity waiting in the tax code, and it says something about how common this situation is. Past the age of 50, a worker is permitted to contribute more to retirement accounts each year than a younger worker can. The provision is called a catch-up contribution, and for a narrow window in the early 60s, the allowance expands again. Legislators do not write exceptions for rare events. The rule exists because arriving at 50 behind schedule is the ordinary outcome. The system was drafted around it. The specific limits change annually and are worth checking for the current year. Social Security carries a similar overlooked lever. 25 years of payroll deductions have been flowing into it, and for a large share of retirees, it ends up among the biggest components of retirement income, rather than a rounding error at the bottom of the statement. Claiming it early permanently reduces the monthly amount. Delaying permanently increases it. For someone convinced he is short, the most accessible money is not money he has to go out and earn. It is money already recorded under his name, waiting on patience rather than effort. Which brings this back to the figure mentioned at the start. Take 2 people, identical in every respect. Same age, same 80,000, same 1,000 a month, same returns. One begins now at 47. The other begins at 52, after 5 years of intending to. The first finishes near 700,000. The second finishes near 446,000. $255,000. That is the price of the 5 years, and nobody took it. It was never removed from an account or lost in a market. It simply never arrived, because the money that would have built it was never given the time to do so. The villain in this story is not the market, or the salary, or the 20 years already gone. It is a belief that arrives at 47, feels like realism, and quietly makes itself true. The countermove is unglamorous, and that is worth stating plainly, because the moment a person accepts he is behind, someone appears with a faster method. The logic sounds like arithmetic. 20 years lost, so move twice as fast. It is not arithmetic. Whatever raises a balance quickly lowers it just as quickly, And a 25-year-old who loses half his money has 30 years to rebuild. A 47-year-old who loses half his money has deleted the 18 years this entire calculation depends on. The actual method is the same amount every month for 18 years, with no moment at which it visibly works. It becomes $700,000 while the person responsible is thinking about something else entirely. 3 numbers make that possible, and none of them take longer than an afternoon to find. What the employer match is, and whether it's being fully claimed. What is actually being contributed each month, according to the statement rather than to memory. And what the money is invested in, along with what it costs in fees each year. No useful decision about the next 18 years can be made without those 3. $700,000 under the common 4% guideline, a rule of thumb that remains contested, supports something in the region of $28,000 a year before Social Security is added on top. It is not wealth. It is a retirement, assembled entirely from 18 years that had already been written off as spent. The $80,000 was never the problem. It was never even the main variable. At 47, the slow half of the work is finished, the unrewarding half, the half during which almost everyone concludes the process has failed and stops. What follows is the half that pays. The window was never missed. It was stood in front of for 20 years with the eyes closed. If your number is closer to 0 than 80,000, that video is on screen now. And leave a comment with the age you started.